wonderful and very important panel discussion now. So I'd like to bring to the stage our moderator for this panel, Dana McCallum, to introduce this topic, and I'll be right back.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Dana McCallum, one of the board of directors for Women in 3D Printing and the VP of Sales at Mantle. I hope day 2 at TIPE is going well with you so far, and everyone's able to network and take something home with them and learn something from this conference. I'm really excited for our panel today. I will give you some context on how it came about. End of last year, I was flying out to Mantle's headquarters, which is in San Francisco. And so flying from Cleveland to San Francisco is about a 5-hour flight. So it's a lot of time, which I've grown to love because I'm able to do 2 things. One, I'm able to focus and catch up on work. And the second thing I do on flights, especially at that length, is reflect. Reflect on family, reflect on friends, something I recently did with fun with my husband or family. And then also reflect on work. And during my reflection moment on this plane ride, I just came to thought of, holy crap, I just left my 2 kids who are 14 months apart, age 2 and 1, at home with my husband for 4 nights and my mom, who helps us nanny throughout the day, which is super helpful, but just left them at home. And did I order enough diapers? Did I have enough food at home? You know, all of these things are going through my head all while I'm on a plane ride out for work, right? And so I'm just, I keep thinking about, how do we do this as women? Or even parents, men too, how are we successful in our jobs? And how do we be, at home and be successful, if you will? How do we create a work-life balance? And that's when I decided to submit this topic and wanted to learn from our great panel today, who I'll introduce in a little bit, and also learn from participants too. Ask questions away or send in your chats your advice on how to create this work-life balance. If it was easy, we'd have some solution, but I know it's not. And so, in any case, on this flight, I also had a reflecting moment of a Netflix show that I watched during one of my first maternity leaves. And we're going to play this video now, which will show you some of the emotions going through at least my head. I'm sure others can relate to it too. So I wanted to share it with the group here. Sarah, are you able to help me share that video?
If you want to bring one foot forward into a lunge and
Thanks, Sarah. It just makes me laugh. Everything that's happened within that show, somehow I've experienced. I'm not sure, again, about all of you, but it just speaks volumes to what my experience has been like as a mom. And I highly recommend Working Moms on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, it's a great binge watch. In any case, that's a snippet of our lives today. Of course, this was all recorded pre-pandemic, endemic, whatever we're calling it now. And the pandemic has brought up even more challenges. And we certainly can relate to the emotions and challenges and struggles that working parents have gone through, and working moms in particular is our panel for today. So whether you're a mom, you're expecting, you're planning on having kids, you're a father, being the support system of a colleague, friend, family member, or a person who wants to get some balance in your life, we're excited to have you here today. There will be a moment of reflection. As I mentioned, I like to reflect, and I'm going to include that in the panel here at the end, right before Q&A. And the goal of that reflection is to take 30 seconds. Hopefully, if we have more time, we'll allow it, of course. But in any case, take 30 seconds to really think about one item that you want to commit to for this year. What do you want to change in your life that will help create that work-life balance and bring happiness to your life? And we'll learn from our panelists today of, different suggestions that maybe they've gone through. What have they gone through? What have they learned? What can they give advice around to create this work-life balance? So with that said, I am really excited to introduce our panel to you, Sarah Gerke, Kristen Melherin, and Mara Bolis. And I've gotten to know Sarah and Kristen over the past several years through Women in 3D Printing. And also Mara, I spent time with last week on a call, and our conversation was absolutely inspirational. So these wonderful women can relate to this topic and will be able to help provide and share their stories. And also answer questions at the end. We'll save some time for Q&A. Without further ado, I'm going to share my presentation. Wait. Yeah. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes. Do you want to go into presentation mode on it, Dana?
Yes, good call. All right, so this is our panel, and we're going to start off with introductions of each of our panelists. Meet Sarah. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
I do. Hi, I'm Sarah Gerke. You might know me from the industry. I've been working in 3D printing since 2014, initially in media. Now I am the Senior Director of Strategic Communications and Ecosystems at Nexa 3D. I'm also on the board of directors at Women in 3D Printing and the head of DEI at Women in 3D Printing. I do a lot with 3D printing. I am also a mom. I have a newly 2-year-old son, George. We call him Geo. He's a scamp, and he was born just barely in the before times in November 2019. So we had just a little bit of what we might call normalcy with him, where we were mall walking to get used to being out in the world, and I was trying to get back to physical condition after making an entire person in my body. And I've worked from home since 2014 as well. And I remember being pregnant, anticipating my son, and saying that the thing I feared the most was sitting there at my desk, because my office is always in my house. And I didn't want to be sitting at my desk at my computer doing work while breastfeeding my child. That was the before times. We didn't know what was going to happen. I came back from maternity leave in March of 2020, March 1st. And I had 2 weeks planning to go to Rapid, planning to start traveling, figuring out how to breastfeed and start pumping and storing milk for my child, how to leave him for the first time. And then the world shut down and I didn't need to go anywhere. So it was a really interesting time. I did nurse my child at my work desk, which had been a nightmare, but turned into a blessing. My childcare is my mom. She comes to our house every day. She's here right now and looks after my son, and my husband works from home now too. So it's just a whole thing. And we also have 3 cats. I'm still got to act in a pandemic safe show in person, as well as a virtual theatrical production. So being a multifaceted, active human person, as well as a mom to a very active toddler, is a learning curve. And I'd like to pass on to our next panelist to introduce her learning curve.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Hello, Kristen.
I'm thrilled to be here. I don't get, honestly, I don't get talked about my family as much as I'd like to. And I think that a lot of us probably feel that way as well. They're such a huge part of my life. And so I've been really looking forward to this because they mean everything to me. I married my husband, Ant, back in 2012 when I was living in the UK. He's from Manchester. So that's always been a great, I love that for cultural reasons for my daughter. My daughter's 6 years old. You can see her there. And I have 2 cats as well. One of them is also named Rosie, Sarah, which I thought was funny. And I put that picture of my cat, not to be a crazy cat lady, which I probably am, but it exemplifies kind of my home life working here. I was trying to get work done, and this picture was just like literally, I think, a week ago. And I was trying to work, and he, of course, just came up and just sat right on my arm as I was typing, like it was no big deal. So I have the 2 fur babies as well. I also have Airbnb that I host just because I feel like I don't have enough going on in my life as it is. So that fortunately does run itself for the most part. So that was a lot of work when I set it up in 2014, but now it's just kind of passive income, fortunately. I don't have as good of stories, I think, as Sarah does in terms of, I've been fortunate because I have a girl, so she's a little bit easier, I think, than the boys, from what I understand. But it's been interesting, and I go through, I think for me, the thing I think it's important to talk about as a mom is, it's okay to feel overwhelmed, and I think it's okay to feel mom guilt. I have a lot of mom guilt. I don't know if the rest of you do. But, I have been very active. I didn't introduce myself properly. I am just recently the president now of Women in 3D Printing. I have been on the board of directors for the last couple of years. And I also just started as the general manager of powder bed fusion products at Nexa 3D just last week, which was, in hindsight, I probably should have started next week. So it's been a really interesting start to the year, but my daughter's wonderful and she's lovely. And she always talks to people at school and people who will listen about how her mom is a scientist and works in 3D printing. So I always like to go back to that. And it makes me so happy that I could be that good, what's the word? I can't think of it. Representative for her in terms of, what you can do. So she says she wants to be a mom and an astronaut. And I said, great, you can do both. So.
Aw, that's wonderful. Thanks, Kristen. And we have Mara. Hi, Mara.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's so nice to be with you today. To talk just a little bit about my background, I started my career a while ago now, even though I still feel much younger than I actually am, in international development and working in government and then going into consulting. I got really interested in finance and then decided to do my MBA at night while I was in consulting. And at that time, my husband and I pretty much worked all the time. And I look back and think, I used to think I was really busy, and then I became a mom, and then I really found out what busy was. I got pregnant in 2006 with my first, and I was in a job that and I really struggled with whether or not it was ethical to look for a job when you were pregnant. And it was before I was 3 months, and I thought, hey, we don't know anything until 3 months, and I'm miserable, and this is just what I have to do. So I found a new job. I went to the New York Fed, and I only told them after I got the job that I was doing. And it was a thing. I don't regret doing it at all. And I would recommend anyone to just soldier through and do it rather than sticking with a job that you hate. But it was, I mean, it was hard. I don't know that my relationship with my supervisor ever really recovered. Then we left New York when I was pregnant with my second because we were desperate for additional childcare support, and my parents lived in the Boston area. And I went back to work after a year. So Ina's my oldest, who's the one in the baseball cap, and Livia is my baby, who's in the tie-dye. And I lasted a year at home, and that was not working for me either. And then I went back to work at Oxford, an international development organization where I stayed for 11 years. And while I was working on women's rights issues around the world, I was able to see firsthand just how this is a universal struggle in terms of women either feeling guilty that they should be spending more time with their kids because they're too busy at work, or not even really having that paradigm because there's no space really afforded to you to work. And so you're just trying to eke out a way to make, while the expectation is that you're only going to be with your kids. So it's a universal situation that I don't think we really, and well, there are very few places that have gotten it right. And we'll talk more about kind of some of the solutions that enabled me to stay at my job. They were very flexible and made accommodation for me to be able to stay involved and in work that I really cared about. But I think the takeaway is that none of these structures were really built for working moms in the first place. No workplace was built for mom in the first place. And we've had to kind of wriggle ourselves into pretzels in order to try to make it work. So if you're feeling uncomfortable, it's because I don't think a pretzel is a particularly comfortable shape. And it really is, it should be up to workplaces to make accommodations and provide more support so that we don't have to be turning ourselves into knots. And recently this whole topic has become my life's work. I've just joined Marshall Plan for Moms as the Chief Strategy Officer. And I am so delighted because I think it's really the time is now to raise up just how hard this is moms around the world, but in this country in particular.
Mara, thank you so much. On that note, could you just explain a little bit more about Marshall Plan for Moms for our audience here?
Yes. So we are a national movement. Go to marshallplanformoms.com right now and sign up to join us. Our mission is really to make workplaces work for moms and have the unpaid and paid work that moms do across America respected, rewarded, and appreciated. Our main objectives are really seeing an increase in how companies support childcare, an increase in the uptake of paid leave, but really as importantly, getting men to take it. A very slim percentage of men who are afforded paid leave actually take it because they're worried about negative ramifications or not looking. And then rooting out the motherhood penalty, which is there's a tendency when mothers give birth, then they get mommy tracked, and there are downward implications for their salaries. When men become fathers, they're seen as more stable, more promotable. So the pay gap actually really starts to divide when you look at fathers and mothers, even more so than men and women. So we want to, the motherhood penalty will do a lot of things in terms of equalizing conditions between men and women in the workplace. And in order for that to take place, we need to have the proper supports, such as childcare and paid leave.
Wow. Awesome. Yeah, such a hot topic. And we certainly should all go to marshallplanformoms.com to sign up so we can all be part of the movement. I'm going to escape from presentation mode just because I cannot see anyone. There we go. All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much. we're going to start diving into some questions. As I mentioned, we'll leave some time at the end for Q&A. So as you think of a question, make sure to submit it. We'll start with Sarah. When you were telling work about being pregnant or expecting, what were the emotions that you're experiencing going into that conversation?
I was in a really, I was in a strange place. It was pretty unique. I was running my own company at the time. I was the sole proprietor of Additive Integrity, LLC, which is a company that I ran by myself, offering editorial services. I worked with about 24 clients across the industry. My primary was Fabaloo. And so all of my other clients, I just said, I'm going on maternity leave. I'll be gone 4 months. I'm not taking any contracts. Peace. Fabaloo is a daily news publication. And so for them, when I even talked about going on board with them, one reason I wanted to work with them in the first place was because I knew them as people, and I knew them as respectful family people who would be supportive. So when we started talking about the potential of my taking a contract there and becoming the managing editor, I said that we were planning on starting a family in the next few years. So that was 2018. 2019, I became pregnant, and I told them shortly before we announced publicly, and we worked out the plan, and just said, I will be off the grid for 4 months. Enjoy. It was an interesting conversation. I saved it for the tail end of our weekly meeting, and we just kind of talked through all the other business. I was like, one new item, I will not be here from November until March. So let me know what that looks like. And they were brilliant about it, and it really reinforced why that was a team I wanted to work with. And then when I was looking for a full-time position and clearly ended up at Nexa 3D, it was important to me to find a place that would support me, knowing I was a mother, knowing I was a remote employee, knowing I work out of my house, that my office is fully functional. I'm in here all the time. I've got a door, and it's directly below my son's bedroom. So it was important to be very clear about all of that. So also, if anyone hears some thunder, it's a very excitable toddler boy who really likes hopping, and he's a Geo bunny right now.
We would love to have Geo Bunny in our panel too.
Don't be surprised.
Mara, what were your emotions? I know you mentioned Oxfam and being pregnant at the time, and then having to switch jobs and telling them. How did that go? And were you nervous for that type of conversation?
It was awful. I mean, I really felt just the weight of kind of the disconnect between my hopes for myself personally and my professional ambition. Mm-hmm. It was really awful. It wasn't Oxfam was the job that I hated. It was another place. I really liked Oxfam, stayed there for a long time. But in this job that I was in, it was one of those things when you knew you started it and you're like, oh God, I never should have taken this. You're like 2 weeks, 3 weeks in, you're like, oh, what was I thinking? And that we had already sort of planned that this was the time to try to start a family. And I wasn't willing to put either of those things on hold. So I just kind of, in terms of applying. And when I told them at work that I would be leaving on maternity leave, my supervisor, I could just tell she was not happy. She was angry. She kept it together, but she was angry. And I felt like that was so unfair.
Fair.
So it took a lot. I had a lot of people saying that I shouldn't change jobs, that I should just get a job that I hated and just ride it out, get the maternity leave, and then leave. And I guess I was too impatient on both fronts to take that path. So I went for it, and honestly, it's a risky move, but why should it be? I mean, it's just crazy. We're supposed to leave a part of ourselves kind of at home or at bay in order for other parts of ourselves to advance. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, completely agree. Does not make any sense. Another kind of hot topic that we've heard about for years is maternity leave and the length of maternity leave or even parental leave. So I wanted to, Kristen, ask you, how was your maternity leave and what was the length? Did you feel like it was long enough, or was it perfect for you?
Yeah, my maternity leave was actually really unusual. It was very different than I think most. But I can tell you this: I'm a perpetual silver lining person, so I can always find the silver lining in anything. Like, challenge me, I tell you. I look at my maternity leave as very much a silver lining. I had been working for this company for a very long time. I think I was there for about 9 years, and I had grown stagnant. I didn't hate it, but I was very understimulated, let's say. And so when I was about 5 or 6 months pregnant, I decided to take advantage of essentially that situation. And I just, I said, look, I'm quitting. I'm out. I'm just going to make the most of I'm going to enjoy my pregnancy, because I was lucky enough to have a good pregnancy, and just, not take that stress off my plate, just, the guilt, the stress, all of it. And so I just quit my job, and I knew it was a bit silly because, I was giving up maternity leave. I was giving up, that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to lie, we went into a lot of debt because of it. Because I ended up taking I think it was almost 8 months, all said and done, that I took off. And I am very much a person, I am very ambitious and career driven. And so it actually almost was probably a bit too long for me, because I was kind of excited to get back to work. Mm-hmm. I like that. I like having both in my life. But the thing that came out of it that was really awesome is how I got into 3D printing. Is that I had that time. I was enjoying being, a mom, and I wasn't rushing back to take a job. And then just one day out of the blue, I got contacted by a recruiter and said, hey, would you be interested in this job? And I was like, you know what, that sounds kind of cool. That sounds kind of interesting, and it was back in the UK. My husband was homesick and wanted to take the baby back. And so I was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's try this. So that's how I got into 3D printing. Actually, was just, kind of randomly, a random call.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to be, it was. And, I never, ever envisioned taking that much time off. But it just, it just happened. You can't, I think that's the most important thing as a mother, as a parent, is, nothing, none of this is predictable. None of it, absolutely none of it. If you think you're going to want to stay home for a year, you're going to want to go back after 3 weeks. If you want to stay home for 3 weeks, you're going to want to take a year. None of it is, you have no idea what's going to happen until it happens. So it was interesting and unexpected, but it all worked out great in the end.
Awesome. And Mara, with your experience and all the research you've done, when looking at family leave plans, we've heard a lot of discrepancies between the US and other countries. Are you able to provide more context around this and, what the US sees and perhaps where we should be going, what other countries may be doing?
Yeah, it's bad, people. It is bad. 186 countries around the world offer paid leave for new mothers. And globally, the average paid leave is 29 weeks. So about 7 months paid leave. Paid paternity leave, that's maternity. Paid paternity leave average is 16 weeks, so 4 months paid. Do you know how much we have in the US? This is how much we have in the US.
Wow.
Big fat 0 is what we can be assured of. And there's a move in Congress right now under the Build Back Better Act, which would guarantee 4 weeks of paid leave. But it is stalled because of Republican stonewalling, and there are a number of Democrats that are worried about the size of the overall Build Back Better budget package. But we have got to do better in this country. We have got to do better. What we've decided is that we'll leave it up to the private sector to offer paid leave. But what that means is that currently only 21% of workers have a paid leave option. 21%.
Wow.
And then, who's the hardest hit? I was looking at the disparities before this call. Only 9% of the lowest wage workers have access to paid leave.
Wow.
So that, at executive levels, you have like 30%. It is still unconscionably short. I don't know if all of us on the panel know what it feels like after you've given birth. You are in a medical crisis. Like, you are not fine medically in any stretch of the imagination. And the thought that the vast majority of women in this country are asked to basically go back to work. Yes, your job is protected for 3 months, but that doesn't really mean much if you're not paid. Basically go back to work with an extreme medical condition is just so unfair. And the expectation basically is that you won't. Is that you're gonna just go without your paycheck, or just people's work is low wage work is so much taken for granted. So we should be outraged, but instead we blame ourselves.
Yeah.
That we can't make it work. It's my fault. I should have done this earlier in life. I should have done this later in life. I should have moved towards my parents. We always blame ourselves in an individual capacity, as opposed to looking at what systems and structures should be in place in order to support us properly.
Wow. Yeah, something has to change. It has to. Having such a low amount of offerings out there for paid parental leave creates that much more stress and possibly, the postpartum side of depression or all the anxiety within families when they're trying to just start their family. Who wants to start off on a bad foot?
Mm-hmm.
So Kristen, you brought up the mom guilt and feeling guilty at times between, I'm assuming, choosing maybe your kid versus work, and what did you mean by mom guilt? And is there a certain scenario that you can describe to us and how you overcame that mom guilt?
Oh, I don't know. I'd love to hear from more people as well and their thoughts on this. But I think mom guilt is there almost all the time. I feel it pretty often. And if I'm not careful, I feel mom guilt and then I feel work guilt. I feel both at the same time, which is really the worst. Really. And it's, and I think, again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. I think it's important to acknowledge it and not try to pretend like it's not there, because of course it's there. We're humans. But what I try to do is it's maybe a bit cliche, but it's about being in the moment, right? It's about making the most of whatever's happening to you right now. I can't, right now, this is fantastic. I can't be thinking about, oh my gosh, I didn't do this or whatever for my daughter. And I do like this week is an exceptionally busy week. And so I do feel, I have felt that a little bit more this week than normal. But you just have to stop beating yourself up. I think that's what it boils down to is I'm creating this for myself. I'm beating myself up, and that serves absolutely no purpose. It serves no purpose for anybody. It doesn't make anything better for my daughter. It doesn't make anything better for me. It doesn't make anything better for my family. So, my husband and my daughter are proud of me. So own it, own that, run with it, enjoy my job. And then when I'm not working, have clear boundaries and then spend time with my family. It's very important, I think, just to create those boundaries and stick to them. And the hardest thing to stick to for me is my own self-sabotage rather than the exterior. It's more internal. And that's BS, why am I doing that? So I remind myself how stupid it is. And then I try to snap myself out of it. So, there's no magic, spell, right?
Yeah. Agreed. I think the boundaries, that's a good suggestion. Knowing, when it's 5 p.m. or 5:30, at least in my situation, my kids need to eat. So work is going to have to pause until tomorrow, because after I'm done feeding my kids, I have to bathe them, and then I'm going to bed at 8 p.m. because I'm exhausted. So I think that creating boundaries
are
good.
critical, absolutely
Yes.
critical.
Yeah.
For your just mental health, I think, is what it boils down to.
Yes. Sarah, when we talk about creating this work-life balance, did we lose Kristen? There she is.
Wrong button.
When we talk about this work-life balance, what have you done to at least create some type of balance? I know it's never going to be even, but what have you brought into your life or daily habits to help create that work-life balance?
It is definitely a difficult thing. We've been talking about boundaries right now. Those are vital. We need to have them since the world is on fire. My husband and I both work from home, but because I have done for about 8 years now, we knew that buying a house. So I needed a home office. I have a beautiful door. I love it. It's closed right now. Yay, door. My husband does not have a door because when we bought this house, we did not know he would be working from home forever. So good on him for making do with his office space. But we also had to figure everything out about, what that means for us and how to balance everything, because we had been completely relying on my mom as our childcare. Now with family things changing, my son is older, he's more interactive, and he can absolutely outrun my 72-year-old mother on the streets. Please don't tell her I just told everyone how but she's had 2 knee replacements. The toddler can outrun her very, very well. So we started looking into daycares, and then Omicron hit. George is 2. He can't be vaccinated yet. My husband and I, my parents, we're all fully vaccinated. We're all fully boosted. We keep a very tight bubble. His health is the number one thing. But we had a blizzard on Monday. My mom could not come to our house. She couldn't drive safely. So my husband and I had to talk, and he took the day off work. We've been talking about what this means. All of the daycares are completely booked and understaffed. There's no place for him to go formally. So we as a family had to come up with a new plan. And because it's also 2022, parental equality is a great thing. My husband is stepping back to take a part-time position at his company, and he's our primary childcare starting February 1st. So I'm our breadwinner. I'm still at home. My son is still nursing for nap time, for bedtime, for all of that, but I'm here.
Wow.
But it is a big thing, and we had to have a lot of discussions about, how does Paul feel about the face of the patriarchy, looking at him as a hands-on father who's going to be spending so much more time being the primary caregiver for our child. And how do I look at the patriarchy and the expectations hoisted upon me as the mother of a child to not be the one stepping back while I'm sitting here like, I love my career. I love the work I do at Women in 3D Printing. I love the work I do at Nexa, and I don't want to slow it down. And I love my family. So it's a lot of boundaries, and the office door is the biggest one. Communicating with my family is the biggest one. Obviously, that's different in every situation. We have a certain amount of privilege, and Paul being able to step back to part-time. I have a huge amount of good fortune being married to a supportive partner. And it's very difficult for single parents, single moms, single dads, single anyone, and any non-traditional households. There's a lot to consider. So I can only speak to my experience, and I know it's a very fortunate one. And it's still—
But with challenges, you still had challenges. Yeah.
It's so hard. And we know we're also in a place, we're one and done. This uterus is closed for business. It's done now. I did the thing. I made this, and we made that choice together as well. And it would be so hard. I don't know how you do it, Dana, with multiple kids, and Mara with multiple kids. Some of my colleagues have 3 kids, and I'm just sitting there like, how are you doing it? Lisa, no, no, I can be a great mom to one, and I hope I can be a good mom to one. But I
You
know
will be. You already are.
it's also understanding your own personal boundaries. And I understand I, as a human, am selfish enough that I should not have multiple children because I would lose myself and for my mental health. And I did suffer from postpartum depression. I did search for the support of a community of people to talk to. And from, my OBGYN prescribed me Zoloft, and it got me through a really rough couple of months. Came out on the other side, everything's good, but that's not, it's hard. And so it's all choices, accountability, and communicating with your family, with your caregivers, and with your community, with your tribe. That whole, it takes a village to raise a child. So true.
Oh my gosh, so true. Yes, I couldn't agree more. And so thankful to live next to my in-laws and my parents and my sister, who all contribute to my kids multiple times a week. So, Mara, what about for you? How do you create a work-life balance?
Well, if I can just kind of reflect on everything that everybody said, and that this, again, to kind of reflect the fact that even before the pandemic, we were never set up to succeed, right? There are no systems in place in order to offset our childcare costs that would make it easier for women to stay in the workforce. We're all talking about the patchwork solutions that we've had to come up with for ourselves, with our friends and family. My mom watched the girls 2 days a week, which was the only reason why it was economically feasible for me to stay in a highly rewarding nonprofit job that helped women and advanced women's rights work around the world, but would not have been feasible if I didn't have childcare subsidy for my mom. And it's just so unfair. I mean, Sarah, when I'm hearing you describe, I mean, you have come to a wonderful solution together. But what we all went through during the pandemic, and particularly parents of young children, like, what was the plan? We were just completely left on our own to be like, oh, suck it up, figure it out. Okay, but childcare centers are closed. Yeah, too bad. So take care of your kid at home. Okay, but I have to work. Not my problem. There was no systemic response. There are individual companies that I think provided additional support and provided backup care and did some funding, but it's really time for a systemic response to say none of this was set up for us to work in the first place. The pandemic decimated women's careers. 12 million women left the workforce during the pandemic. It's going to take years and it's going to take ages for us to get back just where we were before the pandemic hit. Rates of anxiety and depression are through the roof. And even with that level of attrition, there's a McKinsey study that showed that 1/3 of mothers are planning on quitting their jobs in the next few months because they cannot take it anymore. One of my best friends from Oxfam she's Filipina originally. She's leaving the country. She's leaving to go live in the Philippines because they cannot make it work in the US. They can't afford that. Her paid leave fell through. She can't afford the childcare, which, by the way, she's paying for, and she's not getting because the daycare center's been closed because of COVID and because her son has been routinely sick, and she's leaving this country. It's just awful. And not even, I mean, Sarah, you mentioned single parents. How are they supposed to get by right now? So I think we've made it in terms of work-life balance. We weren't in a crisis. We could cobble together kind of enough supports in order to get through the week. But I think this crisis has unearthed the fact that that's insufficient to stem the suffering of women, particularly women, because women do 2/3 of the care work around the world. So many women across this country.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I know we are out of time. One thing, just let's take 10 seconds, write down one thing you want to change for this year to help create that work-life balance. I think it's super important to do that. We talked a lot today about creating those right boundaries. What are the right boundaries for you? And while we're taking those couple seconds, I just want to thank Sarah, Mara, and Kristen for being here today, for sharing your stories, opening up, super meaningful to me and to our audience. I'm sure saw a couple of chats. I couldn't keep track of all of them, but really was an amazing panel with 3 amazing women. So thank you so much.